Beautiful. Yeah, so this is our agenda. Um, 35 slides. So as I said, I might not be able to cover it all in the next hour, but I'm going to try my best. Um, and oh, Holly's baby's coming real soon. I've got the chat up. I'll try to answer any questions in the chat that are raised. But yeah, feel free to speak up if there's something of value that you'd like to add to the conversation. Let me minimize everybody. There we go. Okay. So yeah, we'll be discussing digital etiquette, and the purpose of that, like I said, is just to make sure you all feel more comfortable and confident when you're engaging both with clients and your communities and discussing your AmeriCorps service. We'll also be talking about the AmeriCorps elevator speech real quick because I know explaining to others what you do and all the different programs you touch can be like really confusing. So I'm going to try to leave us with a template to just streamline that a little bit. And then towards the end, we'll be discussing the member assistance program. This is, we pay for this for our AmeriCorps member times for all members to have access to a slew of different services, and we'll talk about those specific services. But the big ones are specifically like counseling. You have 24/7 call availability to somebody with a master's degree in counseling. Um, and so that is a very helpful tool because I know service can be challenging and stressful, but there's also a bunch of other stuff like financial support, legal support. So we'll talk about everything that the member assistance program offers. And then finally, just some reminders and updates. Okay, so the definition of digital body language. It's how we communicate non-verbally in virtual spaces. So that's our tone in emails, how quickly we respond, our visual video presence, and use of digital tools like emojis or reactions. And then etiquette. Etiquette is about formality and knowing how formal to be when and with who. So we'll talk about that more specifically in a bit. And then that last point, all of this is a learning experience. We are all at very different parts of the technology literacy spectrum. And even like me, somebody that is Gen Z, even I still struggle with understanding some of these rules and expressing myself in the best way I can. Oh, it's personal stuff too, James. Yeah, we'll talk about it. Personal, like especially it's for your all's um, your work-life balance, which includes life. So yeah, it's okay if you make mistakes in your digital etiquette. It's okay if you've done some of the things that we might be discussing. Again, it's a learning experience. Homes for All AmeriCorps, that's what it's intended to be, is an entry-level learning experience. So if y'all wanted to discuss in the chat, I would like to know what digital platforms you use to share about your AmeriCorps service, if any. I'm just curious. Um, and I'll move on to the next slide. But yeah, we'll see what those responses are. So these are some interesting trends. Where's that? Oh, right. So this is the different age ranges and then how comfortable they are connecting with colleagues on social media. Oh, what? Uh, sorry, Brian, you're doodling. I don't know how to make that stop. Um, Stopping my share. I don't know what happened, Brian, but try not to do it again. But compared to the pre-COVID-19 pandemic, 43% are video conferencing more, 43 or 49% are video conferencing more, 43% are emailing more, 42% are calling more, and 41% are texting more. So also in the chat, feel free to share what digital tools your site uses to communicate. And I also want to know how you feel about virtual meetings like this and how those have become more popular. So this matters because in today's world, a lot of our communication is happening online, whether it's through email, social media, virtual meetings. Just like in person with personal physical body language, we have digital body language. And so it's important to understand how that's potentially being read by others because we have a duty as service providers to be flexible, accessible, and engaged. And we also have a duty to uphold work-life boundaries. So formality can be tricky to gauge, but we'll talk about how to feel more confident in those boundaries. Yeah, thank you all for sharing your preferences. So yeah, we're going to be discussing now why public engagement matters. So it strengthens professional relationships on both an individual and organizational level. It helps you understand the community's wants and needs, contributes to sustainability, which means that even after you leave your site and the program, that network, that connection is still going to be benefiting that site. My favorite is probably boosting knowledge sharing, because I know we all have so much expertise and knowledge to give to one another, and especially in a state that is, no judgment, very technologically behind. It's important that we keep up these networks. Yeah, no worries, Brian. I'm just reading the chat now. Yeah, we're all happy to have you here. I appreciate you all just trying to join. I know it's not the easiest. But yeah, thank you all for sharing. Mobilizes community assets. I know that there are so many assets that come and go all across the state, and it can be really difficult to stay informed. But if we have these connections to tell us when a new asset becomes available or is no longer, that is what is going to help us better client outcomes and get them services that are available to them as fast as possible. And then finally, community connections are healthy. I don't think this comes as a surprise to any of us, but it's crucial to not just our community, but ourselves and our personal emotional health. So this is just some facts here talking about why community engagement is so important for everybody. So for example, people in neighborhoods with higher levels of social cohesion experience lower rates of mental health problems than neighborhoods with lower cohesion. And that doesn't matter if that is a rich or a poor neighborhood, based off of that social cohesion solely. Neighborhood social cohesion was also associated with a reduction in depressive symptoms in older people. It's usually, especially the elderly, that get left behind when a community isn't able to gather. And this quote from a former Surgeon General of the United States, the last 3 presidencies, he wrote that loneliness and weak social connections are associated with a reduction in lifespan, similar to that caused by smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So I just, again, wanted to reiterate how important this is. And yeah, so we'll be talking about strategies, but yeah, how to feel more confident doing this. So I found this image interesting. It's about the spectrum of community engagement. And along the spectrum, as you go, it is increasing the impact on what decisions are made and therefore what outcomes are created. And so returning members, especially if you would like to share in the chat based on last year, from this year, new members too, if you've experienced a challenge with public engagement. But yeah, I want us to think about why it can be a challenge and why sometimes it feels easier to not go out and engage and put ourselves out there. But it can be challenging in a lot of other ways as well. Okay, now I want to discuss categories in communication. So something that I want to highlight is that you all are at very different sites with very different norms, rules, all that jazz. And so these are sort of looking at it as a big picture as an AmeriCorps member solely. But also in this, you'll see that I really encourage you to talk about these things with your supervisor and your site if this conversation gives you ideas. And yeah, it depends on your audience as well. Is it a client? Is it a colleague? Is it somebody, an external community member that has, some social capital and you want to connect with them? We're talking about all of those. So something to ask ourselves is if it is synchronous versus asynchronous. Those are new words. So everybody that's joining right now, we're all together the same time, even though we're not in the same space. That is synchronous. We're here together. Asynchronous would be if you watch the meeting recording after this. That's meeting asynchronously and not at the same time. Another way to compare is like traditional versus digital. And so traditional meetings, traditional communication is sort of any kind of physical indication of engagement and feeling, smiling, nodding, or verbally commenting agreement or disagreement. Whereas digital, compared to traditional, digital looks more like leaving a comment, using emojis, putting feedback in the chat, and all that. And then also written or spoken, obviously, speaking, even though it's digitally on this meeting, versus written, that would be in like an email or text. Visuals such as emojis, GIFs, but also like data. And then next slide, we'll talk about digital body language. So those gestures and facial expressions that we make digitally, but also our sort of our writing tone. Another thing that matters on the communication is if it is recurring or not. Is this somebody that's calling and, you're just going to refer them somewhere, or somebody that you're meeting and you're just telling them about your program, but it's not likely, either of you will need to collaborate in future. That's just a single meeting, and that will be approached differently from a recurring meeting with a client that is coming in often. And then formality, I think this is a helpful way to think about it. The pace and length often determines the formality, and that's not like a hard and fast rule. But for example, instant messaging is a very quick pace. So a quicker pace can equal like less formality. So you don't need like perfect punctuation. You could maybe use some, acronyms like BRB, or, if they're familiar with those things versus an email, that should include addressing who you're sending it to, a body. And so that is going to be more formal, and you're going to feel, yeah, you're going to want to be more formal in an email versus a text. Those two modes of communication should look different. Okay, other key aspects are our tone of voice. So ask yourself what you're trying to convey in your digital communication, whether that's here in like video chats, or in emails, or talking to clients. So you're trying to convey professionalism, urgency, warmth, and this is you. and based on what you value and how you want to be perceived. Definitely avoid jargon. This is fine when talking to colleagues, but when talking to clients or some other public service officials, they may not know what you're talking about. And so any abbreviations, um, just explaining those, making those clear, but also staying concise and only communicating what they need to know. Cultural sensitivity, so be mindful of cultural differences in communication styles and norms. Again, this could be based on your site, this could be based on where you live, the clients that you're working with. So it's important to respect and adapt to these differences. And then proofreading, BC and CC. So for example, whenever I send you all emails, it's usually BCC, blind carbon copy. I think that's what that stands for. And so when I send it to you all, you can't see who the other recipients are. So for you all, that might be beneficial if you are sending an email to like a bunch of different community leaders or a bunch of different clients, and it's the same email, but it's going to different clients, and you want to make sure to keep their information, like their email, confidential. So that's the time you would use BCC. And then CC, for example, in emails, when you see me CCing Holly on those, that's so that she also gets it, but mainly as like a forwarding. It's not necessarily like directed to her. I also want to mention when you all receive emails from Holly and I, where the other one is CC'd, make sure to respond reply all so that we're both getting the response, because if you just hit reply, then the person that is CC'd is not going to get that email and it'll have to be forwarded by the other person. So just be aware of that. Um, Timeliness and tone, be clear and concise. And finally, know your audience. Okay. So this is a discussion I wanted to have. I think it is important. We did not really talk about this a lot last year, but I really want to know how you all feel about requiring cameras to be on during video meetings, or not necessarily like requiring, but encouraging. I wrote some of the pros and the cons down. Um, yeah, I totally see the cons of the stress about being on camera. I know you all are public facing a lot of the day. In addition to privacy concerns, you know, these meetings are recorded and it's shared on the Homes for All YouTube channel. And if you're not comfortable sharing your face, that could be viewed on our YouTube channel, then that's fine. Something else that is really important, and I hope that now that we're more in person is being reduced a bit, but the virtual meeting fatigue, it is very real. And if you're having a lot of virtual meetings or phone calls, it can really wear down on you. And finally, technical difficulties. As we've seen, it's something's always gonna happen. I know I often have to turn my camera off so that I have enough like Wi-Fi bandwidth to be able to present and be on Zoom. The reason why I want to have this conversation is because I don't want to ask you all to turn your cameras on for me. Like these meetings aren't for me and for my ego, and to make me feel like respected. Like it's really for you all, not only in like training and professional development, but to be able to see one another, because we don't get to see each other very often at all because you all are at very different places in the state. Um, so this is one of our only opportunities for us to do that. And I think it's a lot easier to remember who your peers are when you can connect a name and a site to a face. When your camera's on, you are less likely to want to engage in some kind of distraction, which I get it, but that's sort of like a self boundary to hold yourself accountable if necessary. And then also with the camera on, you get a little more digital body language. I'm presenting right now, so I can't see your faces, but you all can see each other's faces and see how you are reacting to this presentation. Um, so yeah, I just wanted us to reflect on this kind of as a program as a whole. and assess how we feel about it. I'm not gonna make any requirement, but my final thought is that if you believe that it has a positive impact on your engagement, then I think it's a really good idea to turn it on, because it benefits you and everybody else. Yeah, again, like I understand that like technically y'all are not always able to join, or you will like you're joining on your phone or something like, yeah, totally understand. And we understand. That's why I'm like not requiring it, but I'm just saying like for you to consider your circumstances and maybe be a bit more intentional about digital engagement. But I appreciate you all. Your camera's on already. It's lovely to see you. And again, like you can change your mind. You're always allowed to change your mind, whatever you're feeling. We're all feeling differently on different days. So, okay, so on formality, I think this little spectrum is really helpful. Again, going back to like the pace sort of determines how formal it is. So going from a text message, very quick to instant chat to like instant message threaded chat. Um, I would like to know if how your all sites communicate, like if you all much prefer IM, if that's something that like works or if it's solely email. And then going along the continuum further to more formal is emails, phone calls, and letters and memos. So if you're sending some important document, like that is something that is formal that needs to be emailed. Um, a quick reminder or an update can be sent through a text if that is an effective way to reach the audience. But uh, the longer a conversation, the more you should lean towards putting it in an email. And then finally, um, you can ask for preferences. You can ask clients if they're comfortable with texting and if that's the best way to reach them. Um, an example about formalities, like I consider it more appropriate to put an emoji in a Google chat to a colleague than in an email to a client notifying them about an upcoming appointment. So yeah, like that. I think you all as a core um, and like a group of peers are able to be less formal with one another than you might be um, with like your other colleagues that you're working with. Um, but yeah, just you can ask for preferences. Like it's not a big deal. And as the first graph, the only graph that I showed you all, like there are very different trends and generations on how they feel about formality and what they're comfortable with and want. So yeah, it's okay to ask. Don't assume. Um, okay. Digital etiquette with clients. This is something that's important when related to boundaries. Um, but when interacting with clients digitally, it's essential to remain professional. So try to avoid overfamiliarity in language, maintaining a respectful tone, understanding that as an AmeriCorps service member, like you are in a position of power compared to them in some ways. So yeah, just stay respectful, be mindful of self-disclosure and the lines between personal and professional. I can share more resources on self-disclosure and feeling more confident in that. But if you're finding yourself self-disclosing a lot of stuff with clients, I think that is the first sign to contact some type of like talk therapy help. That would be a great opportunity to call the member assistance program line um, and talk to them about what you feel this like urge to talk to the client about. Always double check recipients to ensure you're sending information to the correct person. Avoid sharing sensitive client details over unsecure platforms like text. I usually use instead of like names for clients, preferring like their initials. Use encrypted emails or organization approved methods when necessary. Um, we talked about this a lot in orientation with boundaries and confidentialities, but personal, identifiable health information cannot be shared. That's anything that could be that somebody could use to identify who that person is. Yeah, Noelle, you're fine. I'm sorry you're going to the hospital. I hope you're okay. The digital body language tips. You can use tools like ChatGPT or Grammarly to review your grammar and digital tone, whatever you're comfortable with. You can put in a message and say like, oh, I want this to sound more respectful. Like, how do I do that? Something else, if you ever join like an AmeriCorps virtual meeting, you may notice that the chat kind of like goes crazy, or maybe even sometimes in our meetings, like the chat goes crazy and it's really annoying. So you can actually go in the chat and mute the notifications to make it so that it's easier for you to stay engaged and not getting caught up in that discourse. Remember that digital records are a double-edged sword and that they last forever. What you put on the internet, what you download, what you share, it's there forever. I think the biggest point is to think strategically about what kind of message you're trying to send, about what you value, and what you care about in your goals. And then finally, I think be cognizant of your opportunities to model positive leadership and healthy connection to clients. Again, you have some of this professional capital, and can be a positive model for them in that way. Okay, so now we're going to get into the elevator speech. We are moving right along. So all members, I want you to reflect and take note of any potentially valuable community connections that could be made, or ones that could be deepened in order to better outcomes for clients. So these are people in personal, professional, academic, religious spaces, and personally and professionally. So, and then I want returning members to consider what community connections they've made, and the value that those provide. Let's check on the chat. Yeah, good to hear. I'm really glad to hear that a lot of your all sites are, I don't want to say strict, but adamant about work-life boundaries and making sure that you all, yeah, have your work phones and aren't having to call um, out of office hours. We, with HHCK, we have like a Ring Central app that gives us a different like office phone number. So that's what we use, but that's possible too, to have two different phone numbers on the same phone. I did not bring this up, but I will later on with our updates. So this Thursday, I think at noon, if you're wanting to talk more about boundaries and confidentialities, if you weren't able to make it to the in-person orientation, or if you did make it and you want to talk more about it or work through like specific obstacles, we'll be having an open virtual office hours on Thursday at noon. Just members, it's not going to be recorded. It's just going to be like a discussion with everybody to share their knowledge, expertise, lived experience, and hopefully, yeah, gain something from one another so that we do feel more confident going forward with boundaries and confidentiality, because it can be difficult. Okay, before we go into the template of how to construct an elevator speech, I want to make a note, say something about imposter syndrome. I don't know if you have heard of this, but if anybody would like to offer like a definition, to me, it is sort of like you don't feel qualified to be doing what you're doing. You feel insecure, not confident, in the services that you're providing. It could do with like introversion and feeling too like shy to put yourself out there, not feeling like you deserve to be in a space. And so therefore like not engaging with that space. I want to shut that down because you all, with your service at your site, are given incredibly valuable insight into the housing crisis. Your voice matters a lot, and people want to hear it. They want to hear your thoughts on the population that you serve and the how your site is trying to fix it. Almost everybody has some kind of stake in the housing crisis, and they want to know how your organization, how you are trying to fix it. Again, it's okay if you're introverted or get socially anxious. That's why we're having this conversation, to hopefully make it easier to put yourself out there. And that final note, don't try to be perfect. Nobody's perfect, as Miss Hannah Montana said. Um, as long as we're trying our best to genuinely connect, that's what matters, and that's what people see, not whether or not your resume is long enough. Okay, so this is a sort of basic template, and again, this recording and the PowerPoint will be shared with you all. And this is for like a 30-second, like very quick elevator speech. So maybe just like some stranger, or if you're doing some type of like tabling event talking about AmeriCorps or your site. So you can start with a hook, something that is unique or engaging about your AmeriCorps service. I'm biased. I think it's pretty unique as is. That, yeah, we are like the first housing focused AmeriCorps program. Step two is to explain the impact of your service. So what your role is. I think a great tip for understanding your role and concisely sharing it is you can look at your position description. And that has very specific language about if you do case management, volunteer management, referrals, whatever. Understanding your role and how it benefits the community is important for them to understand why they're talking to you. So this is an example, but I'll have another one at the end. Let me check on the chat. Yeah, imposter syndrome. Riley says imposter syndrome does not equal valid self-criticism. Yeah. So yeah, if it's okay to be self-critical and look inward, that's not saying that like you have imposter syndrome. And we are all learning and growing and making mistakes and needing to be critical of those. Yes. But when it is getting, it starts to hit like red flag territory when like you you are not able to recognize like your actual real qualifications because of like insecurity. And that's not only letting you down and feels bad, but your clients as well, you're not able to like show up for them as much. Okay, next. Then you can personalize it. So share like why you're passionate about what you do, why you joined AmeriCorps, what your plan is for using this time for your future goals. And finally, is a call to action or some kind of invitation. So how can you ensure that you're gonna follow back up with this person? If it is a recurring connection, how are you gonna follow back up with them and keep this momentum going rather than just letting it like fizzle away? Okay, so this is an example and it's got all four of those steps. She would say, "Hi, I'm Valerie Roberts. I'm a Homes for All AmeriCorps member serving at the Homeless and Housing Coalition of Kentucky." That sentence alone is like 90% of the report, in my opinion. I'm a Homes for All AmeriCorps member serving at blank. Like that is your title, that is your role. Um, Does that make sense? I know that can be challenging and it's very wordy. But yeah, that's it. You're a Homes for All AmeriCorps member serving at whatever site you're at. And you're working to address housing and homelessness in Kentucky. You can be more specific depending on your site's mission. And then that second step, what do you do? How are you actually trying to solve this? And then personalize it. So one of the most rewarding parts of my service is seeing people find long-term housing solutions after facing uncertainty for so long. Or you can say, you know, I experienced housing insecurity myself, and so I know I need to do something about it. And then finally, the call to action, how to continue the relationship. You could say if you're interested in learning more about our work or how you can support our efforts, I would be happy to share. Um, and maybe you have a business card, or you all can share emails, or there's like another meeting coming up that you all can connect. So yeah, this is a very solid example. And yeah, it's not too hard. I know an elevator speech feels overwhelming again when your role is fairly unique and you are a liaison between multiple parties. But I know you can do it. Other questions to ask yourself and consider when you're thinking about an elevator pitch before you talk to somebody. I think it's really crucial to like plan and consider the point of the conversation. So what are you trying to achieve? Why does your organization do what it does? Where are you located? What population do you serve? How does your site do what it does? What is your ask? So basically, like, why are you talking to this person? What benefit are you trying to get from them? What do you need from the person you're communicating with? And along with that, what can you offer them? How can this be a mutually beneficial relationship? And also any questions that you have for them. Okay. Elevator speech tips. We've got 10 slides left. We're cruising. Elevator speech tips, keep it concise, like 30 seconds to a minute. Again, if it's some random person that's like never heard of AmeriCorps, 30 seconds is probably good. When you're at the Kentucky AmeriCorps Accelerator at the end of October, that might be a longer conversation explaining what you do with somebody else that is also engaged in public service. But really just try to focus on the key points, who you are, what you do, and why it matters. Make sure to speak from the heart. I think authenticity really resonates with people and helps them remember you and the conversation had and what you cared about. So yeah, these conversations like don't have to feel extremely transactional and like boring. You can talk about what motivates you personally. Um, adapt for different audiences. Yeah, this is crucial. If it's somebody that's like not a client or not a colleague, ask like why they would care about the housing crisis. Like where where do they stand on how does the housing crisis impact their life, basically, because we're all impacted. Second to last point is to practice. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. And you can just like rattle it off without even thinking and do a tabling event like a champ. You can practice with clients, family, colleagues. I think kids are really awesome too, because if you can get a kid to understand AmeriCorps service, then you could get anybody to understand AmeriCorps service. And there's, might be interested. Um, and finally, um, engage with the listener, ask questions, provide information that they would find pertinent, make it more of a conversation. So not so much an elevator pitch, but a conversation. People really like stories and facts. They also really like to talk about themselves, as Michael pointed out at orientation. So, ask about their grievances and their hopes for housing. Um, and yeah, try to figure out why they care. Um, yeah. I'm going to include this resource in the wrap-up email. I have yet to look into all of these resources, but I thought this was a really cool collection of what's out there and some potential tools to help. Final thoughts on public engagement, and then we will move on to the member assistance program. So keep business cards on hand all the time. Ask your site if they can provide them. If not, let us know. Along the line of like always having business cards on you, always have your AmeriCorps A on you somewhere. If it's on a lanyard, if it's on a lapel, like a lapel pin, if it's on your shirt, like just an A somewhere, a hat. And I know a lot of you new members that were able to make it to orientation are like, what pins, what swag are you talking about? I will be mailing it ASAP. And you all have that to wear. But on your business cards, make sure to include the AmeriCorps and HHCK logo. You can ask us for that stuff. And yeah, if your site is not able to provide business cards, we can talk about it. If you're about to do some type of like tabling event, or I don't know, you just know a lot of people interested in AmeriCorps. If you want to talk to your colleagues more about AmeriCorps, let me know, and I'm more than happy to share any materials that we have. We have like little brochures talking about AmeriCorps and the services we do throughout the program, benefits, whatnot. That third point, it's okay to say, I don't know. I think a lot of the pressure that we feel when engaging with the public and trying to share about our service is that like they're going to ask a question and we'll feel like caught up and like that's when that imposter syndrome sets in and like, oh, I have no idea. And maybe it is valid self-criticism. Maybe it is something that you should know. But it is okay to say, I don't know, I'm gonna go figure it out. That's totally fine. As I said, I'll say it again, be genuine. You can be genuine and be real with this connection. Utilize your resources, so your sites, me, if you just want to like brainstorm and strategize for some type of like public engagement, like let's talk about it. I would love to. And finally, keeping boundaries in mind, plugging it just one more time. At noon this Thursday, we'll be discussing boundaries and confidentiality. So if you've been struggling at all with that, with keeping boundaries with clients or with setting work-life boundaries or feeling confident and making sure that you and your client, everything's staying confidential, I really encourage you to join us then. And that's around lunchtime, so it can be like a little lunch and learn to chat with each other about any of the challenges or tips that we've learned. Okay, let's see, it is 2:46. So I think we can actually finish on time. So the Member Assistance Program, it is a program that is paid for by Homes for All, and it is designed to support you in providing accessible and quality mental health services. So I'm going to call it MAP from here on out, Member Assistance Program. It provides you with 24/7 toll-free telephonic access with counselors holding at least a master's degree. And then other services that we'll talk about include life coaching, medical advocacy, work-life resources, legal resources, financial resources, and access to professional and personal development webinars. So the counseling specifically, I think is somebody asked if they're able to call about like any issue, or if it just has to be related to AmeriCorps service. They can help with any issue involving family, conflict, relationships, substance abuse, anxiety, depression, or your service. Any of that. So yeah, that is available. Okay. So the life coaching, you have up to 3 sessions available. So this is intended to help with life transitions, creating better work-life balance, setting goals, and improving relationships. So we talked about goals at orientation a little bit, the in-person orientation. But if you're feeling a little stagnant or wanting to make more concrete steps, more concrete plan to go forward, I think that's a great opportunity. The medical advocacy, I put doctor referrals as a big one, but it is so much more. They can help with insurance navigation, doctor referrals, specialist referrals, care transition, discharge planning, and then it mentions an adult care coach. For work-life resources, it includes adoption, elder and adult care, pet care, transportation, parenting, childcare, special needs support, and wellness. Legal resources, you get a 30-minute consultation, and after that, there's a 25% discount. So you're available to connect with experienced, vetted professionals in a specific area of law, whatever you're needing. So this could be about divorce, custody, bankruptcy, budgeting, estate planning, wills, personal injury, malpractice, or major life event planning. Financial resources. You can get access to financial planners, accountants, and credit counselors, like real ones. And this includes an initial consultation with follow-up meetings as needed. These consultations include bankruptcy, budgeting, debt, identity theft, home buying, college planning, if you're trying to work out using your education award and any other scholarships or things like that, or other financial topics. Let's see if there's anything in the chat. Any questions about the MAP program? I don't see any. So here are some FAQs about the counseling. So yeah, all the counselors are master's level clinicians. So they're social workers, psychologists, mental health counselors, marriage and family therapists. So these people are not able to like prescribe a medication, but they could help refer you to someone who is. And the care is 100% confidential. The referrals that they provide include legal financial services, housing, group therapy, face-to-face counseling, or elder care and childcare options. Oh, what did I do? Okay. Is there a limit to the number of times a member can call a counselor? No, you can call as many times as you want during your service year. Will members be able to speak to the same counselor consistently? So you can request the same counselor when you call in, but there isn't a guarantee that you'll receive the same counselor. So I know that is kind of stinky, but all telephone counselors can see notes from previous sessions. So it's not like you have to like re-explain your whole life story. Again, being connected with somebody different, they can read your notes. Okay, I think that's all for the member assistance program. Yeah. So optional development opportunities, I shared a lot in the September monthly email. Whenever you do these activities, whatever time is devoted to it, make sure to log it under AmeriCorps training and let me know if you reviewed it so I know where those hours came from. But some upcoming webinars, and I'll share all of the registration links in the wrap-up email. There's going to be an AmeriCorps webinar coming up. I think this one will be really valuable about managing mental health in the workplace. And that is for like AmeriCorps members specifically. And then I shared this in the last, I think it was in the September email too, or like the more resources that I shared. But it was, it is a YouTube video from the Coalition for the Homeless in Louisville. And they had somebody, I don't know who, maybe like, I mean, they knew the law, so maybe a lawyer, but to talk about knowing our rights under House Bill 5, which we talked a little bit about this at orientation, but this is the Kentucky state bill that made it so that people cannot sleep in their car for more than 12 hours or sleep out in public. So if you are working with clients that often sleep outside or in their car, I think that is a really valuable video to watch just to be aware and to share that knowledge with them on how to stay safe. That last, the vote riders, I've talked about this a few times, but this is a resource if you have clients that need IDs, birth certificates, social security cards. You can have them reach out to vote writers, and they can both pay and help with like transportation to get them that documentation. So that is a really great service, and it's being offered before the election, but it's not necessarily like it's not like they have to vote in order to get their ID. Um, if anything, this is like less about encouraging voting and more about just getting those vital documents to clients. And then September 28th, this will be both in person and hybrid online. It is a symposium on disability and debility in Appalachia. So that is one that I'm really looking forward to, especially because October is Disability Awareness Month. So that is what we'll be talking about next month, and I'll share some more resources about that. Program updates. Let me see the chat. Pause. Yeah, all this will be summarized in an email. Okay, so this week we have 3 Homes for All birthdays. Very serendipitous. We have Miss Whitney Bowling at the Housing Development Alliance in Hazard, Eddie Delano here at HHCK, Noel, I don't know if he's still here with us, but he's with the Kentucky Fair Housing Coalition. So yeah, big birthday month. Riley asked if the symposium will be recorded. It did say it was hybrid, so I hope they'll record as much as possible. But yeah, just register and see. When I share those resources, like they're not always AmeriCorps resources, and so I don't have like administrative access or knowledge of these things. But I do have knowledge of our upcoming office hours. Once again, this Thursday, the 19th at noon, talking about boundaries and confidentiality. If you want to join that, let me know and I'll send you the calendar invite. And you don't even like have to converse. Like if you just want to eat your lunch, you're welcome to join and we can chat about it. And then the last Thursday of September, I want to talk about managing office or managing donations to your office. And that'll be on the 26th at 3 p.m. So if your site is dealing with a lot of donations, you don't really know how to handle it, let's talk about it. Let's figure out solutions that other sites have sorted out. So if you're interested in that one, let me know. And again, the purpose of these office hours, it's totally optional. But it's mainly so that you all have your specific needs addressed because you're all doing very different things at very different sites. Like we're doing this training on digital communication because I know you all are digitally communicating with me here right now. But other topics like managing donations or serving in a shelter or whatnot can be, yeah, it's harder for us to connect even though we're a wealth of resources. So yeah, I want to be able to hopefully have more topics too. We'll see about engagement, but let me know if there are specific topics that you're interested in that you want to talk with other Homes for All members about more in depth to see how their site works. Because I think you might be surprised just how different all of our sites are. Lastly, we have site visits coming up. So I'll be sharing the availability form with your site soon, so they can enter all the times that they're available. And then I'll start sending out calendar invites and scheduling those to head out and see you all. So that's probably my favorite part of the year. Yeah, Sonia, like the office hours, like Sonia has had a lot of difficulties with donations, and I mean they're constantly getting donations at Safe Harbor. It's kind of impressive. I don't know where they come from. But yeah, like that is a specific topic that we can talk about more in depth. So reminders, this is the big one. Kentucky AmeriCorps Accelerator. It's coming up October 29th through 30th. It will be in Lexington at the Embassy Suites on Newtown Pike. So if you have not completed the registration yet, please do, even if you're not able to make it, just so that we are clear. Because if you do live more than 2 hours away, we do provide for lodging, and then for everybody, we provide your food and your mileage. So yeah, make sure to complete that registration so we can plan appropriately, book your hotel rooms, figure out any, food accommodations that are necessary, things like that. So I really appreciate if you've already filled it out, thank you so much. And I'm really excited, looking forward to it. I think this is it. Reporting reminder, today's the day. I've already gotten some in, but for returning members, um, today is the day that your performance measures from August will be due. So you can either scan and email those to me, you can take pictures and text them to me, or if you want to physically mail them to HHCK, that's fine. The new service form, I'll attach those in the recap email as well that I send out tomorrow. But the new one should have the 24-25 year on it. I'm not sure if the ones on our website have been updated, but the ones that you get from me most recently use those. And then if you work with volunteers at all, those forms will be due. Now for new members, yeah, if you haven't been able to sort out your reporting system yet at your site, that's okay. And there's yeah, no need to report on August or September until October 15th. Okay. I think that's it. Any questions, comments, concerns? 3 o'clock on the dot. Wow. How are we feeling, guys? Thank you so much for listening. Yes, Michael, you're fine. Okay. Anything else I can clarify? Comments, questions, concerns?
Hey, I'll take this question from Allie. Um, Allie, so if you and Dylan are working with the same individuals, you will just put both of your names on the service forms. So you will not have to report, like he's not going to have to report on them and you would report on them because then that would be duplicating. Does that make sense? So you guys can figure out like if there are, I'm just going to make up a number. If there are 10 people that you both are working with, then he can fill out 5 of those forms, and you can fill out the other 5, um, just as long as you know who is reporting on who. Does that make sense?
And to our new members, Bobby, Brian,
Yes.
I'm not sure if Virginia and them are here. Y'all haven't even gone through orientation yet, so I'm sure you heard a lot of stuff that you're like, what is she talking about? Don't worry, we'll get you sorted. Don't worry, okay? The recap email will include some information, but also I'll be in contact this week to get you all set up and figure out our digital orientation so that you understand the AmeriCorps world. But still, thank you so much for
Thank you.
joining.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank y'all so much. I said
Last
thank you
thing,
all.
guys, you can log this 1 hour as AmeriCorps training on your timesheet. I want to make sure we threw that.
Yes, yeah, Tom Sheets too. But other than that, if y'all don't have any other questions or concerns that you want to talk about, that's all. Just lovely to see your faces. Take care this week, and I'll see y'all at next month's monthly meeting.
Thank you
Thank
very
y'all
much.
so much. Thank you. Thank y'all. Bye, Jennifer. Have a good week. Bye, Riley. See y'all. Bye, Sonia. Have a great evening, y'all.